The envelope slides under my apartment door like a death sentence, white against the grimy linoleum of my Millfield Heights studio. My hands shake as I tear it open, already knowing what I'll find inside. Another overdue notice, another threat, another reminder that my father's gambling addiction has destroyed more than just his own life. But this one is different. The letterhead reads Romano Enterprises, and the message is written in elegant script that makes my blood run cold. Miss Rachel Stone, your father's debt of $200,000 is now your responsibility. You have 24 hours to present yourself at the address below or face the consequences. This is not a negotiation. I sink onto my secondhand couch, the paper trembling in my grip. Dad disappeared 3 months ago, leaving me with nothing but his debts and a pile of lies about where all our money went. I thought the worst was over when the bank took our house, when I had to drop out of college to work double shifts at the diner just to afford this tiny apartment. But this is something else entirely. Romano Enterprises. Even in my sheltered world, I know that name. Everyone in Millfield Heights knows about the Romano family, whispers about what happens to people who cross them, stories that parents tell to keep their children in line. And now they want me. Not my father, not the money he stole, but me. As payment for a debt I didn't create, for choices I never made. The address on the letter leads to the warehouse district, where honest people don't go after dark, where girls like me disappear without a trace. I have 23 hours and 47 minutes to decide whether to run or surrender myself to whatever fate awaits me in the shadows of my father's sins. I spend the night pacing my apartment like a caged animal, my mind racing through options that all lead to dead ends. I could run, use what little money I have saved to buy a bus ticket to somewhere far away. But they found me here, in this anonymous studio apartment that's not even in my real name. If they can track me down this easily, they can find me anywhere. I could go to the police, but what would I tell them? That I received a threatening letter from people who might be connected to organized crime? That my father owes money to dangerous people? The cops in Millfield Heights have bigger problems than one scared girl with daddy issues. By morning, my decision is made not by courage, but by exhaustion. I can't keep running from my father's mistakes. Can't keep looking over my shoulder for the rest of my life. If the Romano family wants payment, then I'll give them what they're asking for. Maybe I can negotiate, find some way to work off the debt that doesn't involve whatever dark fate they have planned for me. I dress carefully, choosing my best jeans and a simple blue sweater that brings out my eyes. If I'm walking into hell, I want to look presentable doing it. The warehouse district looks even more menacing in daylight, all broken windows and rust-stained concrete under a gray October sky. The address leads me to a building that looks abandoned from the outside, but I can see expensive cars parked in the shadows between structures. My heart pounds so hard I can hear it in my ears as I approach the heavy metal door marked with the number from the letter. Before I can lose my nerve, I knock 3 times and wait. The door opens to reveal a man who looks like he could bench press a car, his suit expensive but unable to disguise the violence in his eyes. "Rachel Stone?" he asks, though he already knows the answer. I nod, not trusting my voice to work. "He's waiting for you," the man says, stepping aside to let me enter what I thought would be my tomb. The interior of the warehouse is nothing like I expected. Instead of concrete and shadows, I find myself in what looks like an elegant office space, all polished wood and leather furniture that probably costs more than I make in a year. Classical music plays softly from hidden speakers, and the air smells of expensive cologne and fresh flowers. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time, like a spider's web designed to look like paradise. "Miss Stone," a voice says from behind a massive desk at the far end of the room, and I turn to see the man who holds my fate in his hands. Alessandro Romano is younger than I expected, maybe early 30s. with dark hair and sharp features that belong on magazine covers rather than wanted posters. He's devastatingly handsome in the way that dangerous men often are, wearing a charcoal suit that's probably worth more than my car. But it's his eyes that capture my attention. Gray-green like storm clouds, studying me with an intensity that makes me feel naked despite being fully clothed. "Please, sit," he says, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. His voice is cultured, educated, with just a hint of an accent I can't place. "Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Water?" The polite words feel surreal given the circumstances. "I'm fine," I manage, though my throat is dry as dust. "Good. I appreciate punctuality." Alessandro leans back in his chair, those storm cloud eyes never leaving my face. "I assume you know why you're here." "Because my father owes you money he doesn't have," I say, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice, "and because you think I should pay for his mistakes." Something that might be approval flickers across his features. Straight to the point. "I like that. Yes, your father borrowed money from me, quite a lot of money, and yes, he disappeared rather than honor his obligations. That leaves his debt in your hands." "I don't have $200,000, I tell him. "I work at a diner and live in a studio apartment. Everything my father had is gone." "I know exactly what you have and don't have, Miss Stone," Alessandro says, opening a file on his desk. "I know about your job at Mel's Diner, your apartment above the hardware store, your bank account with a balance of $347. I know you dropped out of college to care for your father, that you've been covering his debts for years without realizing it. The casual invasion of my privacy should anger me, but instead, it makes me feel small and exposed. This man knows more about my life than I know about his, and that knowledge gives him power I can never match." "Then you know I can't pay you," I say, lifting my chin in what I hope looks like defiance rather than fear. "So, what do you want from me?" Alessandro stands and moves around the desk with fluid grace, like a predator who knows his prey has nowhere to run. He perches on the edge of the desk directly in front of me, close enough that I can smell his cologne, something expensive and masculine that makes my head spin despite my fear. "Your father stole more than money from me, Miss Stone. He stole trust, reputation, respect. Those things can't be repaid with cash." "Then what?" My voice comes out smaller than I intended. "What kind of payment are you looking for?" His eyes move over my face slowly, taking in every detail like he's memorizing me. "You're going to work for me, live in my house, follow my rules, do whatever I tell you to do without question or complaint. Think of it as indentured servitude for the modern age." The words hit me like ice water. "You want me to be your slave?" "I prefer the term employee," Alessandro says with a slight smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "You'll have room and board, access to luxuries you've never dreamed of, protection from the kind of people who would hurt you to get to me, all in exchange for your complete obedience." I stand up abruptly, needing to put some distance between us, even though there's nowhere to run. "And if I refuse? Then you leave here and try to disappear, knowing that I'll eventually find you and that when I do, the terms of our arrangement will be far less generous." His voice remains perfectly calm, like he's discussing the weather rather than threatening my life. "Make no mistake, Miss Stone, your father's debt will be paid, one way or another. The only choice you have is whether you pay it on your terms or mine." The room feels like it's spinning around me as the reality of my situation sinks in. No money, no family, no friends with the resources to help me fight someone like Alessandro Romano. I'm completely alone and completely powerless, trapped by circumstances I never chose and debts I never created. "How long?" I whisper. "How long would I have to work for you?" "Until I decide the debt is satisfied," Alessandro says, standing and moving closer to me. Could be months, could be years. That depends entirely on how well you adapt to your new circumstances. I close my eyes, trying to find some reserve of strength or courage that might help me find another option. But there's nothing there except exhaustion and the bone-deep knowledge that I'm beaten before I've even started fighting. When I open my eyes, Alessandro is watching me with something that might be sympathy, though it's hard to tell with someone whose emotions are locked behind such careful control. I need time to think, I say, though we both know I don't really have a choice. You have 5 minutes, Alessandro says, checking an expensive watch. After that, I'll assume you've chosen the hard way. 5 minutes to decide the rest of my life. 5 minutes to weigh slavery against death, submission against extinction. I think about my tiny apartment, my job at the diner, the simple life I've built from the ashes of my father's destruction. None of it is much, but it's mine. Or was mine until 24 hours ago. I think about running, about trying to disappear into some other city where the Romano name means nothing, but Alessandro is right about one thing. If he found me this easily, he can find me anywhere, and next time, he might not be so generous with his terms. If I agree, I say slowly, if I do this, I want your word that you won't hurt me, that whatever this arrangement is, I'll be safe from physical harm. Something shifts in Alessandro's expression, a crack in that perfect control. You have my word, he says, and there's something in his voice that makes me believe him. I don't hurt women, Miss Stone. Whatever else you might think about me, whatever stories you've heard, that line I don't cross. And when the debt is paid? When you decide I've worked long enough? Then I'm free to go? Then you're free to go, he confirms. With enough money to start over wherever you choose, and the resources to disappear if that's what you want. I nod slowly, knowing I'm about to step off a cliff into darkness, but unable to see any other path forward. I'll do it. I'll work for you, follow your rules, be whatever kind of employee you need me to be. But I want it in writing, all of it. The terms, the timeline, what happens when it's over. Alessandro's smile is sharp as a blade. Smart girl. I knew there was more to you than met the eye. The contract is produced with surprising speed, as if Alessandro had been certain of my eventual capitulation. It's written in language I barely understand, full of legal terms that could mean anything or nothing, but the basic elements are clear enough. I belong to Alessandro Romano until he decides otherwise, with no appeal and no escape clause, except his discretion. My hand shakes as I sign my name at the bottom, officially trading my freedom for my father's debts. Welcome to your new life, Miss Stone, Alessandro says, countersigning the document with a flourish. Vincent will show you to your quarters and explain the house rules. I suggest you pay close attention. The man who opened the door earlier steps forward, his expression as unreadable as stone. This way, miss, he says, his voice respectful but firm. I follow him through corridors that seem to stretch forever, past rooms I glimpse through half-open doors that speak of wealth beyond my comprehension. Crystal chandeliers, artwork that belongs in museums, furniture that looks like it was crafted by master artisans. This isn't just a house, it's a palace, and I'm about to become its newest prisoner. My room, when Vincent finally shows it to me, is larger than my entire apartment and furnished with more luxury than I've ever seen in one place. A 4-poster bed with silk sheets, a sitting area with leather chairs that look handmade, a bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in. It's beautiful and terrible at the same time, like everything else in this strange new world I've been thrust into. Mr. Romano expects you to dress appropriately for your position, Vincent says, opening a closet that's already filled with clothes in exactly my size. Breakfast is at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 7. You don't eat unless Mr. Romano invites you to join him, and you don't speak unless spoken to. Any questions? I stare at the clothes, expensive dresses, and silk blouses that probably cost more than I made in months at the diner. What exactly is my position? What am I supposed to do here? Vincent's expression doesn't change. Whatever Mr. Romano tells you to do. Nothing more, nothing less. He leaves me alone in my golden cage, and I sink onto the bed, running my hands over silk sheets that feel like water against my skin. This is my life now, at least until Alessandro decides otherwise. I'm completely at the mercy of a man I don't understand, in a world I know nothing about, paying for crimes I didn't commit. That first week passes in a blur of confusion and careful observation. I learn the rhythm of Alessandro's house, the way his staff moves through their duties with military precision, the unspoken rules that govern every interaction. I attend meals when summoned, speak only when spoken to, and try to become invisible when Alessandro conducts business with men whose eyes hold the kind of coldness that makes my skin crawl. Alessandro himself remains an enigma, polite but distant, treating me like an expensive piece of furniture that serves a purpose but doesn't warrant personal attention. He asks about my comfort, ensures I have everything I need, but never engages in actual conversation. I'm a problem he's solved, filed away and forgotten, except when my presence is required for some specific purpose. But I catch him watching me sometimes, when he thinks I'm not looking. His gray-green eyes track my movements with an intensity that makes my pulse quicken in ways I don't want to examine. There's something hungry in those glances, something that goes beyond mere ownership or control. It makes me feel exposed and strangely powerful at the same time, like I have some effect on him that he doesn't want to acknowledge. The other staff treat me with careful politeness, neither friendly nor hostile, but maintaining the kind of professional distance that makes it clear I'm not one of them. I'm something else, something apart, caught between the world of servants and family without belonging to either. It's Maria, the housekeeper, who finally breaks the silence during my second week. She finds me in the library, a room so beautiful it takes my breath away every time I enter it. Floor-to-ceiling shelves filled with books in multiple languages, leather chairs positioned near tall windows that flood the space with natural light. "You read much?" she asks in accented English, her voice kind but cautious. "All the time," I admit, running my fingers over the spine of a first edition novel. It's the one thing I missed most about leaving college. Maria nods thoughtfully. "Mr. Romano, he loves books too. Spent many hours here as a boy, reading everything he could find. His mother, she made sure he had education, culture, not just business." It's the first personal information anyone has shared about Alessandro, and I find myself hungry for more. What was she like? His mother? Beautiful woman, kind heart. She tried to keep him away from family business, wanted him to be doctor or lawyer, something respectable. Maria's expression grows sad. She'd die when he was 25. After that, he'd change, become harder, colder. Like he lock away the part of himself she loved most. The information stays with me long after Maria leaves, adding another layer to the mystery of Alessandro Romano. It's easier to think of him as a monster, a dangerous man who bought me like a piece of property. But the image of a young man reading in this beautiful library, shaped by a mother who wanted better for him, complicates that simple narrative in ways that make me uncomfortable. That evening, Alessandro summons me to dinner for the first time since my arrival. The dining room is as elegant as everything else in the house, with a table that could seat 20 but is set for only 2. Crystal glasses catch the light from a chandelier that probably costs more than most people's houses, and the smell of incredible food fills the air. "Sit," Alessandro says, gesturing to the chair across from him. He's changed from his business suit into dark slacks and a white shirt that emphasizes the olive tone of his skin, and I have to force myself not to stare at the way the fabric stretches across his broad shoulders. I trust you're settling in well? It's the first time he's asked me a direct question since the day I signed my life away, and I'm not sure how to respond. Yes, sir, I say carefully, not wanting to say anything that might be interpreted as complaining. The room is very comfortable, thank you. Alessandro's eyes narrow slightly. Sir, I'm not your employer, Miss Stone. I'm your owner. The distinction is important. The casual way he says it makes my cheeks burn with humiliation and something else I don't want to name. I understand. Do you? Because you've been walking around my house for 2 weeks like a guest who's overstayed her welcome rather than someone who belongs here. That needs to change. He cuts into his steak with surgical precision, every movement controlled and deliberate. From now on, you'll take your meals with me unless I specifically tell you otherwise. You'll participate in conversation when I require it, and you'll stop acting like you're afraid I'm going to attack you at any moment. I'm not afraid, I lie, though we both know it's not true. Alessandro's smile is sharp as winter. Yes, you are. You're terrified of me, of this house, of the situation you've found yourself in. That's understandable, but it's not useful. Fear makes people stupid, and I have no use for stupid people. He takes a sip of wine, studying me over the rim of his glass. Tell me about yourself, Miss Stone. What do you want from life? The question catches me completely off guard. I don't understand what you mean. It's a simple question. Before your father's debts became my problem, what did you want? What were your dreams, your ambitions, your plans for the future? I stare at him, trying to figure out if this is some kind of test or trap. I wanted to finish college, I say slowly. Get my degree in literature, maybe become a teacher. Nothing glamorous, just something that mattered. And now? Now I'm here, paying for my father's mistakes until you decide I've suffered enough. The bitterness in my voice surprises both of us. Alessandro sets down his wine glass and leans back in his chair, those storm cloud eyes studying me with renewed interest. You're angry. Wouldn't you be? Everything I worked for, everything I built, destroyed because my father couldn't stop gambling. And now I'm trapped here, playing dress up in expensive clothes while you decide what to do with me like I'm some kind of toy. The words tumble out before I can stop them, months of frustration and helplessness finally finding voice. I didn't choose this life, didn't choose to be part of whatever world you represent. I just wanted to finish school and build something small and good and mine. Alessandro is quiet for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally speaks, his voice is softer than I've ever heard it. You're right. This isn't the life you chose, and it's not fair that you're paying for someone else's failures. But Rachel, fairness is a luxury that people like us can't afford. He uses my first name for the first time, and the sound of it in his mouth sends an unexpected shiver down my spine. People like us? People who come from nothing, who have to fight for everything they get, who understand that the world doesn't owe them anything. Alessandro's eyes are intense, compelling, like he's trying to make me understand something important. You think I chose this life? That I wanted to become what I am? The question hangs between us, loaded with meaning I'm not sure I'm ready to understand. For the first time since I walked into his world, Alessandro Romano doesn't look like an untouchable criminal overlord. He looks like a man carrying the weight of choices he never wanted to make, trapped by circumstances just as surely as I am. You could choose differently, I say, though even as the words leave my mouth, I know they're naive. You could walk away from all of this. Use your money to build something legitimate. Alessandro's laugh is bitter. You think it's that simple? That I can just decide to stop being what I am and become something else? He stands and moves to the window, staring out at the grounds of his estate. I inherited this life, Rachel. My father's business, his enemies, his obligations. The moment I was born, my path was set. The only choice I ever had was how to walk it. There's something raw in his voice, a vulnerability that transforms him from monster to man in the space of a heartbeat. I find myself standing without realizing it, drawn toward him by an impulse I don't understand. That's not true. There's always a choice. Is there? Alessandro turns to face me, and I'm struck by how young he looks in the lamplight, how the hard edges of his face soften when he's not performing the role of dangerous criminal. What choice did you have when your father's debts became your responsibility? What choice do you have now? The question hits too close to home, forcing me to confront the uncomfortable truth that we're more alike than I want to admit. Both of us trapped by the sins of our fathers, both of us paying for choices we never made. I chose to come here instead of running, I say quietly. I chose to honor his debts even though I didn't create them. And I choose to honor my family's legacy even though I never wanted it. Alessandro moves closer, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his gray-green eyes. We're both prisoners, Rachel. The only difference is that my cage is bigger and more comfortable than yours. The admission creates a shift in the atmosphere between us, a crack in the careful walls we've both been maintaining. For the first time since I arrived, Alessandro isn't looking at me like I'm his property. He's looking at me like I'm a person he's trying to understand, someone who might understand him in return. What was your mother like? I ask, remembering Maria's words about the woman who wanted better for her son. Pain flickers across Alessandro's features before he can hide it. She was everything good about this world that I'm not allowed to be. Kind, gentle, hopeful. She believed that people could change, that love was stronger than hate, that there was always a way to choose light over darkness. His voice grows quiet. She was wrong, of course, but she was beautiful in her wrongness. She wasn't wrong, I say, surprising myself with my certainty. Maybe naive, but not wrong. There is always a choice, even when all the options are terrible. Alessandro stares at me for a long moment, something shifting in his expression that I can't quite identify. You remind me of her, sometimes, the way you hold on to hope, even when everything around you is falling apart. Is that why you brought me here? Because I remind you of your mother? I brought you here because your father owed me money and disappeared, Alessandro says. But there's something in his voice that suggests the truth is more complicated than that. Everything else is just coincidence. But even as he says it, I can see that he doesn't quite believe it himself. There's something happening between us, some connection that goes beyond debt and ownership and the roles we're supposed to play. It's dangerous and wrong and completely inappropriate given our circumstances, but it's also undeniably real. The sound of his phone ringing breaks the moment, returning us to the reality of who we are and why I'm here. Alessandro answers with a sharp, "What?" And I watch his face transform from vulnerable man back to dangerous criminal as he listens to whoever's on the other end. "I'll be right there," he says, ending the call and turning back to me with an expression that's once again carefully controlled. "I have business to attend to. Vincent will escort you back to your room." Just like that, the mask is back in place, the moment of connection buried beneath layers of professional distance. But I can see something different in his eyes now, a wariness that wasn't there before, like he's suddenly aware that I might be more dangerous to him than he originally thought. As Vincent leads me back through the corridors of Alessandro's mansion, I find myself thinking about the man behind the criminal, the boy who lost his mother and inherited a legacy of violence he never wanted. For the first time since I signed that contract, I wonder if Alessandro Romano might be just as trapped as I am, just as desperate for something real in a world built on lies and violence. The thought should comfort me, but instead it terrifies me, Because if Alessandro is vulnerable, if he's human rather than monster, then what I'm starting to feel for him might be more than just survival instinct. And that way lies nothing but heartbreak and destruction for both of us. 3 months into my captivity, the routine has become second nature. Breakfast at 7 with Alessandro, where we discuss books and current events while carefully avoiding anything too personal. Lunch alone in my room. Dinner together again where the conversation flows easier than it should between captor and captive. I help Maria with small tasks around the house, organize Alessandro's extensive library, and pretend not to notice the way his eyes follow me when he thinks I'm not looking. It's during one of these peaceful interludes that everything changes. I'm in the library, reading in the leather chair by the window, when raised voices from Alessandro's office pierce the usual quiet of the house. Not unusual in itself. His business often involves heated discussions, but something about these voices makes my skin crawl with unease. "You're getting soft, Alessandro." A man's voice carries through the walls, harsh with disdain. "First you take in strays instead of collecting debts properly. Now you're questioning decisions that were made long before you were born." "My methods are my own, uncle," Alessandro's voice replies, controlled but with an edge of steel. "And they're effective. The debt is being paid." "Is it? Because from where I stand, it looks like you're playing house with a girl who should have been sold months ago. There are buyers who would pay handsomely for something that pretty and untouched." The words hit me like ice water, and I have to grip the arms of my chair to keep from falling. Sold. They're talking about selling me like I'm a piece of property, like the contract I signed meant nothing. "Rachel stays here," Alessandro says, his voice deadly quiet. "She's under my protection, and that protection is absolute." "Protection?" The other man laughs, a sound like breaking glass. "Since when do we protect debtors? Since when do we care what happens to the children of men who steal from us?" "Since I decided that's how we handle this particular situation," Alessandro replies, and I can hear the danger building in his voice. "I won't discuss this again, uncle. Rachel Stone is not for sale, not now, not ever." The sound of a door slamming makes me jump, followed by footsteps in the hallway outside the library. I try to look casual, like I haven't been eavesdropping on a conversation that reveals just how precarious my situation really is. When Alessandro appears in the doorway, his face is dark with anger and something that might be fear. "We need to talk," Alessandro says, his voice tight with controlled emotion. "Not here. Come with me." He leads me through the house to a room I've never seen before, a small sitting area that feels more personal than the formal spaces where we usually interact. The furniture is comfortable rather than imposing, and there are photographs on the side tables that show glimpses of Alessandro's life before he became the man who owns me. "How much did you hear?" he asks, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter with hands that shake almost imperceptibly. "Enough," I admit, seeing no point in lying. "Your uncle wants to sell me." Alessandro's jaw clenches and he downs the whiskey in one smooth motion. "My uncle wants a lot of things he's not going to get. You're safe here, Rachel. I gave you my word." "Are you? Safe, I mean?" The question slips out before I can stop it, born from the fear I heard in his voice when he defended me. "Your uncle seemed to think you were making a mistake by protecting me." Something flickers across Alessandro's face. Surprise, maybe, that I'm concerned about his welfare rather than just my own. Giuseppe has always believed that showing mercy is a sign of weakness. We've disagreed about business practices before. But this is different, I press, needing to understand the danger I've brought into his world. "This is about me specifically. He thinks you're compromising yourself by keeping me here." Alessandro moves to the window, staring out at the gardens where we sometimes walk in the evenings when he needs air, and I need to feel less like a prisoner. "Giuseppe has been my father's partner for 40 years. He helped build this organization from nothing, and he's never forgotten that I'm still young, still learning. He sees my protection of you as evidence that I'm not ruthless enough to lead. The admission hangs between us, heavy with implications I'm not sure I want to understand. And are you? Ruthless enough? Alessandro turns to face me, and I see something raw and unguarded in his expression. I used to think so. I've done things, Rachel. Terrible things that were necessary to maintain respect, to keep our enemies from seeing weakness. But lately, he pauses, running a hand through his dark hair. Lately, I find myself questioning whether any of it is worth the cost. Because of me? Because of you, he confirms, his voice barely above a whisper. Because you make me remember what it feels like to want to be better than what I am. The confession creates a charged silence between us, filled with everything we haven't said and probably shouldn't say. I know I should be grateful for his protection, should see this as proof that I'm safe in his house despite his uncle's threats. Instead, all I can think about is the pain in Alessandro's voice when he talks about the terrible things he's done, the weight he carries from choices that weren't really choices at all. Alessandro, I start, then stop, not sure what I want to say or if I have the right to say it. You asked me once what I wanted from life, what my dreams were before all this happened. I say, moving closer to where he stands by the window. Can I ask you the same thing? His laugh is bitter. You want to know what I dreamed about as a child? Before I understood what I was born to become? Yes. I wanted to be a teacher, Alessandro says, his voice so quiet I have to strain to hear him. Like you, I wanted to work with books, with ideas, help children learn to see the world as bigger than the narrow corners they were born into. The revelation hits me like a physical blow. All this time, I've been mourning the teaching career I'll never have, not knowing that the man who holds my fate in his hands once wanted the same thing. You could still do that, I say, though even as the words leave my mouth, I know how naive they sound. You could use your resources to build schools, create opportunities for kids who don't have any. With blood money? Alessandro shakes his head. With funds earned through violence and fear? What kind of teacher would that make me? The kind who understands where those kids come from, I say, surprising myself with my certainty. The kind who knows what it's like to have limited choices and still try to make the right ones. Alessandro stares at me for a long moment, something shifting in his gray-green eyes. You really believe that, don't you? That people can change? That good can come from evil? I believe that people can choose to be better than their circumstances, I say, thinking about my father's gambling, about Alessandro's inherited violence, about my own decision to honor debts I didn't create. I believe that what we do with the hand we're dealt is what defines us, not the cards themselves. Even when the cards are stacked against us, even when choosing good means losing everything we've worked to build. Alessandro moves closer, close enough that I can see the flecks of gold in his eyes, can smell the expensive cologne that's become as familiar as my own scent. Even then, the air between us crackles with tension and unspoken possibilities. We're standing too close, having a conversation that crosses every boundary that should exist between us, but I can't seem to make myself step away. There's something magnetic about Alessandro when his guard is down, when he's not performing the role of dangerous criminal, but just being a man struggling with impossible choices. Rachel, he says, my name barely a whisper on his lips. You don't understand what you're asking of me. I'm not asking anything, I reply, though my heart is racing with the possibility that maybe I am. I'm just telling you what I see when I look at you. And what do you see? His hand comes up to cup my cheek, thumb tracing along my cheekbone with a gentleness that makes my breath catch. I see a man who reads poetry in 3 languages, who builds gardens for his mother's memory, who protects people even when it costs him. I see someone who hates what he's become but doesn't know how to be anything else. Alessandro's eyes close like my words cause him physical pain. You see what you want to see. What you need to see to make sense of this situation. Do I? I reach up and cover his hand with mine, keeping it pressed against my face. Or do I see what you've been hiding from everyone else, including yourself? When Alessandro opens his eyes, there's something desperate in them, something that speaks to the part of me that's been yearning for connection ever since I walked into his world. If I'm what you think I am, if there's something worth saving in me, then what does that make you for staying here? For not hating me the way you should? It makes me someone who understands that we're both prisoners, I say, echoing his words from weeks ago. It makes me someone who's tired of being alone, even in a cage as beautiful as this one. The distance between us disappears as Alessandro's other hand comes up to frame my face, his forehead resting against mine. This is dangerous, Rachel. For both of us. If my uncle, if my enemies see weakness, if they think you matter to me. Do I? Matter to you? The question slips out before I can stop it. Vulnerable and needy and completely inappropriate given our circumstances. But I need to know, need to understand if this connection I feel is real or just a product of my isolation and desperation. More than you should, Alessandro admits, his voice rough with emotion, more than is safe for either of us. Before either of us can think better of it, his lips are on mine, and the kiss is everything I didn't know I was missing. Gentle but desperate, tender but hungry, like he's been starving for this connection as much as I have. My hands fist in his shirt, pulling him closer even though we're already pressed together from chest to knee, and when he groans into my mouth, I feel it echo through my entire body. When we finally break apart, we're both breathing hard, staring at each other with something like wonder and terror in equal measure. This changes everything, Alessandro says, his voice hoarse. Everything. I know, I whisper back, though I'm not sure I understand all the implications of what we've just done. Are you sorry? No, Alessandro says without hesitation, his hand still framing my face like I'm something precious he's afraid might disappear. I should be sorry, but I'm not. I've been fighting this for months, telling myself it was wrong, that I was taking advantage of your situation. But Rachel, what I feel for you, it's not about ownership or power or any of the reasons I should want you. It's something else entirely. His honesty takes my breath away, and I find myself leaning into his touch, despite every rational thought telling me this is dangerous territory. What do we do now? I ask, because the kiss has changed everything between us, and there's no going back to the careful distance we've been maintaining. Now we figure out how to keep you safe, Alessandro says, his voice hardening as reality intrudes on our moment. My uncle isn't going to let this go. He'll see my protection of you as a challenge to his authority, and he'll find ways to force the issue. As if summoned by his words, the sound of car doors slamming echoes from the front of the house, followed by heavy footsteps and raised voices. Alessandro immediately steps in front of me, his body becoming a shield between me and whatever threat is approaching. Stay behind me, he orders, all trace of the gentle man who just kissed me, replaced by the dangerous criminal who rules this world. Whatever happens, don't speak unless I tell you to. The door to the sitting room bursts open without ceremony, revealing Giuseppe Romano flanked by two men I don't recognize. Alessandro's uncle is older than I expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that's seen too much violence to ever look truly peaceful. His eyes find me immediately, cataloging my disheveled appearance and flushed cheeks with the calculating gaze of a predator sizing up prey. So this is the little whore who's caused so much trouble, Giuseppe says, his voice dripping with contempt. She's prettier than I expected. I can see why you've lost your head over her. Watch your tongue, uncle, Alessandro warns, his voice deadly quiet. Rachel is under my protection, and I won't tolerate disrespect toward her. Giuseppe laughs, a sound like breaking glass. Protection? Is that what we're calling it now? His gaze moves between Alessandro and me, taking in our proximity, the tension crackling in the air. How long have you been fucking her, nephew? How long have you been making business decisions with your dick instead of your brain? The crude words make me flinch, but Alessandro doesn't even blink. My personal life is not your concern. Your personal life becomes my concern when it threatens everything we've built. Giuseppe snaps, moving further into the room like he owns it. The Castellano family knows you're keeping the girl here. They know you've gone soft, that you're more interested in playing house than maintaining respect. They're already testing our boundaries, pushing into territory that's been ours for decades. Alessandro's hands clench into fists at his sides, but his voice remains controlled. I'll handle the Castellanos. Will you? The way you handled the Rivera situation? The way you handled the dock workers' strike? Giuseppe's voice rises with each accusation. You're weak, Alessandro. Soft. And this girl is the proof of it. Enough, Alessandro says, stepping forward with predatory grace. You've said your piece. Now leave. I'm not going anywhere until this is resolved, Giuseppe replies, gesturing to his men. The girl goes. Tonight. I have buyers lined up who will pay enough to cover her father's debt 3 times over and restore some of our reputation in the process. The casual way he discusses selling me like livestock makes my stomach turn, but it's the murderous expression on Alessandro's face that truly terrifies me. I can see him calculating odds, assessing threats, preparing for violence that will destroy any chance of reconciliation with his family. No one is selling anyone, Alessandro says, his voice carrying the kind of authority that makes grown men step back. Rachel stays here, under my protection, for as long as she chooses to stay. Chooses? Giuseppe's eyebrows rise mockingly. Since when do debtors get choices? Since when do we negotiate with people who owe us money? Since I decided that's how we handle this particular situation, Alessandro replies, echoing his earlier words but with steel underlying every syllable. I'm the head of this family, uncle. My word is law. The tension in the room ratchets up another notch as uncle and nephew stare at each other across a divide that seems unbridgeable. I can feel the violence building like electricity in the air before a storm, and I know that whatever happens next will determine not just my fate, but Alessandro's as well. You want to make this about leadership? Giuseppe asks, his voice dangerously quiet. Fine. Let's settle this the old way. You and me, nephew. Winner takes control of the family. Loser accepts whatever the victor decides. The challenge hangs in the air like a death sentence. I don't understand all the implications, but I can see from Alessandro's expression that his uncle has just escalated this far beyond a simple disagreement about my fate. Giuseppe, Alessandro warns, you don't want to do this. Don't I? You've made it clear that your feelings for this whore are more important than family loyalty. Time to find out if you're willing to fight for her. Giuseppe's smile is cold as winter. Unless, of course, you'd rather just hand her over and avoid the unpleasantness altogether. I can see the trap closing around Alessandro, the impossible choice his uncle is forcing him to make. Fight his own family for a woman he's known for 3 months, or sacrifice me to maintain peace within the organization he's inherited. Either choice will cost him something he can't afford to lose. There has to be another way, I find myself saying, stepping out from behind Alessandro despite his protective stance. This doesn't have to end in violence. Giuseppe's attention shifts to me with predatory focus. The little whore speaks. How refreshing. The contempt in his voice makes Alessandro take a threatening step forward, but I place a hand on his arm, stopping him before he can make things worse. I'm not a whore, I say, meeting Giuseppe's gaze with more courage than I feel. I'm a woman honoring her father's debts the only way I can, but I won't be the cause of a war between family members. How noble, Giuseppe mocks. But this isn't about your conscience, girl. This is about respect, about maintaining the fear and order that keeps our world functioning. My nephew has forgotten that lesson, but I haven't. Maybe the world needs to change, I say, surprising myself with my boldness. Maybe ruling through fear isn't the only way to maintain power. The words hang in the air like a challenge, and I can see from Giuseppe's expression that I've just made myself an even bigger target. But I can also see something like pride flicker across Alessandro's face, and that gives me the strength to continue. I've seen what your nephew has built here. Loyalty based on respect rather than terror. Prosperity that benefits everyone rather than just those at the top. Maybe that's not weakness. Maybe that's evolution. Giuseppe stares at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he begins to laugh, a sound devoid of humor that makes my skin crawl. Evolution? You think you can change what we are with pretty words and naive idealism? He turns to Alessandro, shaking his head in disgust. She's made you even weaker than I thought. This is what comes of letting sentiment cloud judgment. Rachel is right about one thing, Alessandro says, his voice steady despite the danger crackling around us. The old ways aren't the only ways. Fear only works until someone stops being afraid, but loyalty built on respect lasts generations. Loyalty, Giuseppe spits. You think the families respect you? You think our enemies fear you? They see weakness, nephew. They see a man who's lost his edge over a piece of ass. The crude dismissal of what Alessandro and I share makes something snap inside me. Before I can think better of it, I'm stepping forward, placing myself directly between the two men despite Alessandro's sharp intake of breath behind me. You want to talk about respect? I ask, my voice carrying more authority than I knew I possessed. Then show some. I'm not a piece of property to be sold or traded. I'm not a weapon to be used against your nephew. I'm a person with a voice and the right to speak for myself. Giuseppe's eyes narrow dangerously. Careful, girl. You're in no position to make demands. I'm not making demands, I reply, though my heart is hammering against my ribs. I'm offering a solution. You think Alessandro is weak because he protects me? Fine. Let me prove that his strength comes from having something worth protecting rather than from having nothing left to lose. The room falls silent except for the sound of my own rapid breathing. Alessandro moves to stand beside me, his presence warm and solid and reassuring, but he doesn't try to pull me back or speak for me. Whatever I'm about to propose, he's letting me handle it my way. What are you suggesting? Giuseppe asks, his voice carefully neutral. A test, I say, the idea forming even as I speak. Give me 1 month to prove that I'm an asset to this family rather than a liability. Let me show you that the changes Alessandro has made aren't signs of weakness but of wisdom. Giuseppe's laugh is sharp and disbelieving. And if you fail? If you prove to be nothing but a distraction that gets people killed? Then I'll leave, I say, the words tasting like ashes in my mouth. I'll honor the original contract and work off my father's debt however you see fit, without Alessandro's protection. I feel rather than see Alessandro's sharp movement beside me, can practically hear his protest forming. But I keep my eyes locked on Giuseppe's face. But if I succeed, if I prove my worth, then you accept that what Alessandro and I have is real and that it makes him stronger rather than weaker. The proposal hangs between us like a sword, sharp and dangerous and capable of cutting both ways. I can feel Alessandro's tension radiating beside me, can sense his desire to intervene, to protect me from making a bargain that could destroy both of us. But I also know that this is the only way to resolve the standoff without violence, the only chance we have of keeping his family intact, while also keeping me safe. 1 month, Giuseppe muses, his calculating gaze moving between Alessandro and me. And what exactly would this test entail? How would you prove your worth to an organization you know nothing about? However you deem appropriate, I say, though the words terrify me even as I speak them. Put me to work. Give me responsibilities. Let me show you that I can contribute something valuable rather than just taking up space. Giuseppe considers this for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally speaks, there's something almost amused in his voice. You realize what you're asking for? The chance to prove yourself in a world that eats naive little girls for breakfast? I'm not as naive as you think, I reply, thinking about everything I've learned in the past 3 months. All the careful observations I've made about how Alessandro's organization functions. And I'm not as helpless as my circumstances might suggest. We'll see about that, Giuseppe says, then turns to Alessandro. What do you say, nephew? Are you willing to let your little pet try to earn her keep? Or are you too afraid she'll prove me right about what a liability she really is? It's a masterful manipulation, framing the choice so that agreeing makes Alessandro look confident in me, while refusing makes him look possessive and controlling. But I can see the real fear in his eyes, the terror of letting me step into his dangerous world without the protection he's been providing. The choice is Rachel's, Alessandro says finally, though I can hear the cost of those words in his voice. If this is what she wants, I won't stop her. Giuseppe's smile is sharp as a blade. Excellent. Then it's settled. He turns to me, and there's something predatory in his expression that makes me want to run. 1 month, little girl. 30 days to prove that you're worth the risk my nephew is taking by keeping you around. I suggest you use the time wisely. As Giuseppe and his men file out of the room, leaving Alessandro and me alone with the weight of what I've just committed to, I can't help but wonder if I've just saved us both or doomed us to something far worse than anything we've faced so far. Alessandro's hands settle on my shoulders, gentle but trembling slightly with suppressed emotion. Do you have any idea what you've just done? He asks, his voice rough with fear and something that might be admiration. I've bought us time, I reply, though I'm not entirely sure that's true. And I've given myself the chance to prove that what we have is worth fighting for. Rachel, Alessandro says, pulling me into his arms with desperate intensity. My uncle doesn't make fair tests. Whatever he has planned for you, it's designed to break you, to prove his point about weakness and sentiment. Then I'll have to be strong enough not to break, I say, pressing closer to his warmth and strength. Besides, I have something Giuseppe doesn't understand. I have something worth being strong for. Alessandro's laugh is shaky with emotion. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most foolish. Maybe both, I admit, looking up into his gray-green eyes. But, Alessandro, I meant what I said earlier. You make me want to be better than what I am, and I think I do the same for, you? That has to count for something. It counts for everything, he whispers against my hair, which is why I'm terrified of what my uncle might do to try to destroy it. Outside, night is falling over the estate, casting long shadows across the gardens where Alessandro and I have walked together,